Okay, so uh, going back to our discussion, we have to make a distinction between Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy, and Buddhism as a religion. So this is okay. So if you go to His Holiness's teachings, you will often hear him say that you have to make a distinction. Just because you study Buddhism doesn't make you a Buddhist, right? So, okay, so what is Buddhist science? What is Buddhist philosophy, and what is Buddhism as a religion? Okay, so basically, whenever we talk about any religion, right? Religion is okay. So you talk about religion the moment you talk about after death, what happens after you die, your beliefs or your philosophy after, which talks about after death, afterlife, right? So there you okay. So there are many beliefs in the world. Okay, so Hinduism and Buddhism, we okay, so these two religions, they talk about uh, life after, there's a life after you die, whereas the theistic religions, right, Christianity, Islam, I don't know about Zoroastrianism. So okay, so theistic religion is okay, so where you believe in a created God. And Buddhism is a non-theistic religion which rejects the concept of a creator God, right? So these are philosophical differences. So theistic religions where you believe in a God, creator God. So when you talk about a creator God, you always use the capital G, G-O-D, right? So there are, okay, so sometimes when you open some books, you do find God in small letter, small G-O-D. So those are worldly gods and goddesses, which you find in Hinduism and Buddhism. We talk about worldly god and goddesses. So those are all with small g. So when you see the capital G, means a creator god, right? So those are theistic religions. There you talk about, okay, there you talk about going to heaven, and or you go to hell if you don't accept the word of God, right? So there's this concept of hell and heaven, and it's believed that so little of what I studied in Christianity in school. So there, okay, if you accept Jesus as your savior, so you go to heaven, and there you live with God eternally. There's eternal happiness, right? So there's the result. Remember, we talk about basis, path, and result. So result is what you attain ultimately. So in Christianity, even in Islam, I think they have the same beliefs that you go to heaven and you stay with God, you meet all your family members who've passed away, and you live there eternally. So there's 100% happiness. That's their belief, right? And then in Buddhism, you talk about this path, and the result is Buddhahood or Nirvana. That is also again 100% happiness. So we are all ultimately seeking happiness, right? So either you believe in a creator God, you believe in this cause-effect relationship, pratitya samutpad, dependent origination, and ultimately you cleanse your mental defilements. You ultimately attain a state of perfect happiness, Buddhahood. So these are differences related to what happens after we die. So once you touch these concepts, there you talk about religion, then that's a completely different matter, right? That's religion. That's another compartment. So when we talk about philosophy and science, Buddhist science, so these are things which anybody can study, right? You can be from any background, but when you believe in something like, okay, if you believe that I want to become a Buddha by going on this path, so okay, if you ultimately you have to adhere to Vajrayana, where you have to depend on a teacher, guru, right? So these are all religious practices. So these things His Holiness never talks about in a public talk. His Holiness never touches such concepts, but he does mention that there are differences, and these differences are not to segregate people, but to have respect for each other, right? So anybody can study the Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy. So here in this class itself, we have people from all backgrounds, and it's very encouraging, really. So yeah, and I think we must actually explore all religious philosophical systems. So that will help us be more open-minded, and basically it will just add on to our knowledge, right? So that is more important. Okay. All right. So any questions or comments?
Thank you for
And you know the difference between science and philosophy? Can you say that? Or is not true?
Okay, so science, all right, so I'll attempt. So science is something where we look for something empirical, right? Something which is quantifiable, or something uh, which can be proved. That is what science is.
Mhm.
And also science is something where the results need to be repetitive, right? So if you, okay, so these are all studied in research methodology. So scientific methodology is where the whatever experiments you carry out, that needs to be quantified, and that not just quantified, but that has to be repetitive in nature. Then something becomes a fact, right? Or a theory has to be put into facts. So such things. Okay, so
Here,
philosophy.
and
Sorry.
here in Buddhism, which would be the for Buddhist,
Okay.
which will be the topic?
Okay, so I did a 10-day course. I did a 10-day course on Buddhist science.
Yeah.
So all these
And the
record.
topics?
So topics, yeah. So the topics is on how. Okay, so we have done all this in Buddhist psychology. So
Okay.
mind,
Thank you.
mind. We may say, because mind is non-tangible, right? Mind is something which we cannot touch or see. So we neuroscientists, especially the classical neuroscientists, they completely reject the presence of something called the mind as a different entity from the brain. So now we talked about entity wise one, isolate wise one, different, these things, right? So classical neuroscientists, what they say is the mind does not exist at all. They reject completely the existence of something called the mind. So they say it's only the brain, right? So this is the position of the classical neuroscientists. But now the present modern neuroscientists, they have started to believe that there is something called the mind, but they are not 100% saying that the mind and the brain, they're entity wise different, substantially different. What they're saying is mind is a byproduct of the brain. It comes out of the brain, right? So it is a product of the brain. So they do accept mind exists, but it is product of the brain. This is their position. Okay, so Dr. Eric Kandel, he's a Nobel laureate in, I think, Nobel laureate in physiology. Yeah. So he, in his book In Search of Memory, he has given the two propositions. So one is the mind doesn't exist at all. The second is the mind does exist, but it's a byproduct of the brain, right? And now what is interesting is the second hypothesis given by Dr. Eric Kandel, it has been rejected by Acharya Dharmakirti in 7th century in Pramanavartika chapter 2. So this is Buddhist science, something which you can reject logically, right? Talking of,
Perfect.
yeah. And
And
then,
Buddhist psychology is inside. You can say this as a part of the
Buddhist
Buddhist
science.
science.
And also
Okay.
when we talk about the different kinds of phenomena, manifest phenomena, Hidden phenomena. Hidden phenomena, again, two types, slightly hidden and very hidden. So modern science, they only touch on the manifest phenomena and a bit of the slightly hidden phenomena. They don't even know or accept the very hidden phenomena. So very hidden phenomena is more to do with religion again. Actually, it seems like religion because you have to depend on an authoritative figure or some text, right? But according to, okay, now another interesting thing about Pramanavartika chapter 2, how Pramanavartika chapter 2 came about is, okay, so I shared the story of Arya Asanga, right? Arya Asanga, remember the story I shared? How Arya Asanga meditated for 12 years in the cave just to have a glimpse of Arya Maitreya.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry, I'm completely okay. Forget about Arya Asanga for the time being. I meant to say Arya Dignag. Okay, Arya Dignag I haven't mentioned about. Okay, so Arya Dignag is the more like the first very renowned Buddhist logician. Acharya Dignag. Acharya Dignag. Acharya is like more like a master scholar. So Dignag, Acharya Dignag, he wrote a text called Pramana Samuchaya, compendium. I think I've mentioned this before. Compendium of valid cognition. So that was 100 years before Acharya Dharmakirti came. 6th century, Acharya Dignag. Acharya Dharmakirti, 7th century. So Acharya Dignag, he wrote, before he started writing this text, he wrote two lines, which was a word of salutation to the Buddha, in which he said, okay, so in which he said, okay, now I think I did share it in the 10-day course, which is available on the CIBS Facebook page. I think I have shared the screen back then, but here you can just, I'll try to say the lines slowly. Okay. It says, the one who has transformed into the reliable guide. So these are words of salutation to the Buddha by Acharya Dignag before he started writing the text. So he wrote, to the one who has transformed into a reliable guide. So this reliable guide is the Buddha Shakyamuni. And then he writes, being motivated by altruism. This reliable guide, he was motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings. And then he writes, as the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you I make prostrations. Okay, I'll just repeat. To the one who is transformed into the reliable guide, being motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you I make prostrations. So here, okay, so Pramana Vartika text, right? Pramana Vartika text, chapter 2 of Pramana Vartika, Pramana Siddhi. Just based on these two lines of the word of salutation by Acharya Dignag, after 100 years, Acharya Dharmakirti came, another great logician. He wrote a commentary. The chapter 2 is a commentary on these two lines, just these two lines. So basically in the commentary, what Acharya Dharmakirti has tried to do is, he's tried to prove. So through logical reasoning, he's proved that how did Buddha from an ordinary person became a reliable guide, became a fully enlightened being, not a person, fully enlightened being. So, okay, to the one who's transformed into a reliable guide. So when you hear the word transform means transforming from something to something, right? So from an ordinary being, Buddha transformed into a reliable guide. And then motivated by altruism, this altruistic feeling to benefit all sentient beings. Then he says teacher, he's a teacher, he's regarded as a teacher. Sugata, Sugata means the one gone to bliss, perfect bliss, the one who's gone to bliss. And then protector, to you I make prostrations. Protector is somebody who protects you from all these. Okay, so the Sugata, okay, teacher, Sugata, and protector, these connotations are given to the Buddha, right? He's motivated by compassion, and then he's a teacher, he's a Sugata, and a protector. So this, okay, how this reliable guide, he became a reliable guide through these four premises: altruism, teacher, Sugata, and protector. So this is how chapter 2, Pramana Siddhi of Pramana Vartika was written, which has 283 stanzas, through logical reasoning. So this is science, right? So there are a lot of teachings taught by the Buddha. Of course, even Vajrayana, which is tantric teachings, these are also taught by the Buddha, but they were taught to a very few audiences, because those are very, okay, to study tantric teachings, you have to be exceptionally prepared. One has to have the experience of emptiness and bodhicitta. If you don't have these two experiences, then you are not fit to enter the tantric practices, right? So there are very few people on this in the world who are really into such practices, the real practices. So these tantric teachings are only exposed to such followers of the Buddha's teachings, right? Okay, so that's science. And then philosophy also talks about, okay, so the different schools, like what we did last 2 months, Tenet system, these are all philosophy. So one may not agree. In fact, even within Buddhism, there are 4 different schools and they don't agree with each other, right? So they reject each other's position. So that is philosophy. So these we can study at the university level. But religion is something which we cannot, me as a, if I go and teach at a university, I cannot ask people to convert. I cannot say that you have to believe in afterlife, you have to believe in rebirth. But what I can teach is, okay, rebirth is a concept, though it touches religion. Rebirth is a concept which in Pramanavartika chapter 2, it has been logically established, right? In fact, my teacher, his Venerable Geshe-la, he's very skeptic as a teacher, though he's a monk, he's very skeptic. What he says is, don't talk about rebirth, don't try to establish rebirth based on stories. There are so many stories. In fact, okay, especially in places like Ladakh and Himalayan region, rebirth is a very common phenomenon. So in fact, in our own village, one of our grandfathers took birth in one of our relatives' house, and as a very young boy, he would just tell everything about the person who died a year ago. So these things we get to see, but my teacher says don't rely on these stories, because these stories may, okay, so if you directly know these people, you may have some conviction, okay, there is something called rebirth. But after 2-3 generations, then it only becomes, it's just a story. You have no other proof. So you have to understand them logically, right? So the best book or the best text to understand rebirth concept logically, scientifically, is Pramanavartika chapter 2. Okay, so I think we got too carried away.
Thank you.
All right. All right. So any other questions or comments?
Ma'am, according to Chitramatra school, the consciousness is divided into 4, divided into 8.
Yes, yes.
Okay, 6 common as the rest of 3, and 2 Aliya Vigyana, and
Afflictive consciousness.
okay, thank you.
Okay, the five sensory consciousnesses. The sixth is the mental consciousness, then Alya Vigyana, and then afflictive consciousness. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so yesterday I had a word with the university, and okay, so what I was thinking, and which very much tallied with the universities, how they go about. So I was thinking that maybe on the last day of our class, I thought I would request the director to join us, and he could say a few things, which I think the university normally follows that pattern. Like because online classes is a very new concept in most of the universities, right? So whatever online classes they are doing, so it seems that at the end, last class, the director he joins, which very much tallied with what I had in my mind. And but I heard that the director is not keeping well, right? So let's see if he recovers by Saturday. It'll be nice to hear something from him, because though he's a director, he's okay. So he's a monk. He's a geshe. So geshe is a title for which is equivalent to the university doctorate degree. Wow. So they also study in the monastic universities rigorously. So okay, let me just briefly tell you how they study. I was completely amazed hearing about their curriculum, because we only talk about what we study at the university are very very Western style, but how these monks do their studies, it's so amazing. Okay, so they don't study. Okay, so they study the root text, right? So if most of you may, I think, are into research, so there's something called root source and secondary source, right? So root sources are those root texts. So they directly study the root text. So what happens is most of these monks, they are so they're sent at a very young age. So when they're studying, when they're very young, it's believed that our brains are really sharp at young age. So what they do is, at that young age, they're made to mug up the texts, whether they know the meaning or not. Of course, these are root texts, very difficult texts, and commentary, shastras and sutras. So they're made to mug up the whole text, you know. So when I've been to the university in South India, in Mongkot, Karnataka, so where my uncle also did his studies. So there I used to hear early morning, 3 or 4 in the morning, these young monks, they get up really early and they scream at the top of their voices. And they are like, trying to mug up those lines. So by the time they grow up as a teenager, they're mostly like quite well versed, right, with the text, just verbally. And then they enter into the debate, logic and debate classes, which we touched upon briefly, very briefly in our class. All these entity-wise, one, different, they have debates. And then the debate starts till the end. From that moment till the end, till they get their degrees, debates happen every day. And they do 14 hours of studies a day, 14 hours, rigorous studies. And so when you are debating, so this is what our teacher told me, when you're debating, what happens? Okay, after debate, you also, as you grow up, then you learn all the philosophy. Whatever you've mugged up, the meanings are given to you, right? And then on the debate field, how the debate is done. Okay, so if I'm one of the debaters. I have the opponent, right? Two of us. So if I start the debate, what I do is, okay, I pick up, let's say I pick up this line from Pramana Vartika chapter 2. No, sorry, Pramana Samachya, word of salutation, which I just mentioned. To the one transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, teachers Sugata protected, to you I make prostrations. So if I utter this line, and then I ask the person, what is the line before that? Right? What is the stanza or line before that? And if the other opponent is not able to give those lines, then you're out of the debate. You can't debate further. So this is the debate rule there. So you have to first give those lines. You have to have them clear in your head, the whole text when you debate. So only when you're able to give those lines, then the debate continues. And then the person will ask, prove this, how is this, the syllogism. I think we did syllogism as well. Remember, subject, predicate, reason or sign, and illustration. We did a class on that. So, and then forward pervasion. Okay, property of the subject, forward pervasion, reverse pervasion. We've done all this. Very briefly, we've touched, right? So they use all these rules at the debate field, and they prove, okay, let's say Mount Everest as a subject is impermanent because it is produced, right? So they come up with such a syllogism, and then so such kind of debates happen, very rigorous, right? So though everything is done in Tibetan, but the subject matter, it's very intricate. And only after I knew all this from my teacher, who's also a Geshe, so they all come from the same university. My uncle, my teacher at Tibet House, and the director of CIBS at the moment, Venerable Geshe Koncho Wangdula. So all of them are trained in this manner for 25, 30 years, right? So the only problem is they don't speak English. Okay, so my teacher, Venerable Geshe Dorji Damdula, his English is really good. He was sent to Cambridge by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He's exceptionally logically like a great logician. So I think His Holiness saw that quality in him and sent him to Cambridge I think many years ago to study English, right? So that now, because his English is so good, he can really translate all these extremely important concepts into English from Tibetan. So now, we are all learning because of his, and there are few other scholars, monk scholars who speak English. So these content materials are very important for all of us, irrespective of what religion we follow, right? Okay, so Geshe-la, the director, he's also trained in this manner. So I felt that if he could speak to you all briefly, whenever I have official meetings with him, his conversations are so helpful, though it's just an official meeting. But while he's talking, I learned so much from him, right? So that's the beauty of such trained teachers. So I was just thinking, as a director, he could speak to you as well as, you could all learn something. We could all learn something from him. And let's hope he recovers by Friday. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Or have I put all of you to sleep?
Ma'am,
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
My elder brother is doctor at Birmingham, and he told me that altruism is also very helpful to grow immunity within ourselves. So this altruism and that altruism is the same.
Yes.
Means
Yes.
the willpower to do well for other beings.
Others. other
That
beliefs?
yeah, that is the altruism.
Mhm.
Both the same.
Yes,
It,
they're all same. So
it's
now,
true that
yes,
altruism is the best way to increase our immunity to fight
okay,
against COVID or other diseases.
yes. So your brother is in Birmingham, UK.
Yeah, brother,
Okay,
my own brother.
okay, that's lovely. So yes, now, okay, so there are many.
Sister-in-law is also doctor there,
Okay, so
but
it's
they are scared about the new type of COVID introduced in UK
Yeah.
okay.
recently, before 7 days or 10 days.
Oh,
Yeah. I know. I heard about it also. Yeah.
okay. So
The main problem
there
is
are
not the disease only. Actually, all the neighbor countries they ceased means they disconnected from UK
mm-hmm,
due to this new type, new generic form of COVID,
mm-hmm.
and that may cause of a scarcity of foods and other essential commodities, etc. That may
Okay.
also be happening.
Yeah, so what you said, what your brother said, it's true because there are, this is not just said just like that. There have been many experiments happening, especially in the West. Uh, okay, so if you can Google Professor Richard Davidson, he's a neuroscientist. And okay, so there are few uh, researchers who are very much focused on how meditation, mindfulness, or altruism, such practices, they lead to physical well-being. So these are being experimented in the laboratories. And if you'd like to know more about these things, there are books published by the Mind and Life Institute, right? So Mind and Life Institute is an organization. So it started in 1987, right? Okay, so what happened was, I think there was a Englishman, businessman, who happened to see His Holiness at one of the gatherings, teachings in the West, and along with, I think, okay, so it's, mm, okay, so he's a neuroscientist along with another neuroscientist, a very, his name is Francisco Varela. He's no more now, exceptionally great neuroscientist. Two of them. Uh, okay, Professor Francisco Varela and okay, so I forgot the name of the English businessman. So two of them approached His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 1987. This organization was formed. So one being a very rich man, right? He had a lot of money, so he wanted to use his money to bring about. So you talk about compassion and you talk about the physical well-being, how your mental practices it affects your well-being, physical well-being. So he wanted to invest there, right? So they came up with this organization in 1987, and now it's been 30 years, right? So every 2 or 3 years they hold a conference where His Holiness presides over the conference, along with all the great scholars from these monastic institutes, right? And the world-renowned scientists from all disciplines. So they have different topics for different for every conference they hold, sometimes 2 or 3 days. So after every conference, they put the whole conference into a book. So they publish a book after every conference. So if you go to their website, you will find the name of the books, and most of the books are based on uh, the dialogue between Buddhist science or philosophy. They don't touch much about religion, right? And the modern science, different disciplines like quantum physics, neuroscience, biology, and chemistry, different topics. Okay, so if you want to go further into how altruism, like Sangamitra just mentioned, altruism, how it increases your immunity. Likewise, how practicing compassion and tolerance, it directly affects your blood pressure. Somebody who's calm, right? They are less affected by this problem of high blood pressure. So things like that. These are being experimented in the laboratories. So you can go into their look into their books, right? So there are many interesting books they've published. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so
I think this is the source of the power of a doctor to serve the patient.
yes,
So
this year we all have to be really grateful to the health workers, right?
yeah, health workers,
Exceptionally
nurses.
kind.
Altruism is the source, basic source.
Mm.
Ma'am, even the Buddhist gongs, they have lot of power. There is something called binaural beats. We can Google it, binaural beats. So we tell this to the children, school children who are learning. My daughter, she is in grade 10. We tell her instead of putting any music, you put binaural beats. That improves the focus.
I see.
It has some connection with the Buddhist gongs, actually.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
What do you say, Madhuji? What's the
Binaural
name?
beats. I will
Beats
send a
like.
link. I will
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
send the
thank
link
you.
in the group.
Thank you, Madhuji.
Okay. Okay, so I think it's time we start the topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are all additional topics from here and there. Okay, for those of you who'd like to read Pramanavartika chapter 2, there's an English translation by Roger Jackson. You can, it's available online, or you can buy it from a bookstore. The name of the book Is Enlightenment Possible? So he's a Western scholar. He did the translation. It's called Is Enlightenment Possible by Roger Jackson. All right.
Perfect.
All right. So today we're going to
Is
do,
kind is like kind of this is based on Pramanavartika. It's
this is
like
the translation of chapter 2 of Pramanavartika. Pramanavartika,
it's only the translation.
yes, chapter 2.
Okay. Okay,
So
yeah. Thank you.
Pramanavartika is a text which has 4 chapters, right? Chapter 3 is completely on Chittamatra philosophy. Chapter 2 is on the mind,
Ramanusiddhi.
Pramana Siddhi,
Yeah.
the debate between the mind and the body. Okay, so these two things. The other chapters, they comprise of different topics from here and there. So these are all commentaries by Acharya Dharmakirti on Pramana Samuchaya, Acharya Dignak's text. Okay, so we are supposed to be starting Prasangika school today. So before I start Prasangika school, there's one thing I'd like you all to note down. The difference between, okay, we talked about the difference between Swatantraka Madhyamika and Prasangika Madhyamika. So basically, this is something which is mentioned during Dalai Lama's teachings when he's teaching on the Madhyamika school. Okay, so you can write it down. Okay, so the Madhyamika school, the Madhyamikas who reject, the Madhyamikas who reject self-characteristic, the Madhyamikas who reject self-characteristic only on the ultimate level, only on the ultimate level, and not on the conventional level. Okay, not on the conventional level, you can put it into brackets. So they are the Swatantrika Madhyamikas. So basically, Swatantrika Madhyamikas, what this line is trying to say is they reject self-characteristic on the ultimate level. On the conventional level, they accept. Remember the analogy of the movie screen. So the movie on the movie screen is accepted, which is self-characteristic of the movie screen is accepted on the conventional level by Swatantrika Madhyamika, but on the ultimate level, it's rejected, right? Okay, so Madhyamikas who reject self-characteristic both on the conventional and the ultimate level, they are Prasangikas. Prasangika view is too profound, actually. Okay, have you all got all the words? I'll just repeat. Madhyamikas who reject self-characteristic only on the ultimate level and in bracket, not on the conventional level, they are Swatantrika Madhyamikas. And Madhyamikas who reject self-characteristic both on the conventional as well as ultimate level, they are Prasangika Madhyamikas.
Mhm.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, so if you have no questions, then we'll move on to Prasangika school. Okay, so you can write the definition of Prasangika school. Okay, so definition of Prasangika school is a proponent of entity-less, comma. Okay, so a proponent of entity-less, comma, who does not accept anything that is established. A proponent of entity-less, comma, who does not accept anything that is established. Established through self-characteristics. Even on the conventional level. Okay, I'll just repeat. A proponent of entity-less, comma, who does not accept anything that is established through self-characteristics, even on the conventional level, they are Prasangikas. Okay, so Acharya Buddhapalita, Acharya Chandrakirti, and Acharya Shantideva, they are the Prasangika tenet holders.
Ma'am, can you repeat the name of the acharyas once again?
Okay, Acharya Buddhapalita, Acharya Buddhapalita's commentary on Acharya Arya Nagarjuna's text is Madhyamika Vritti. Acharya Chandrakirti, his commentary on Arya Nagarjuna's text is Madhyamika Avatar. And Bodhisattva Shantideva. Bodhisattva Shantideva, okay, how many of you have heard of Bodhisattva Shantideva?
Myself.
Me too.
Me too.
Okay, so Bodhisattva Shantideva, he wrote a text called Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It's a beautiful text, actually very much relevant to the modern world. So all the instructions on how to practice patience, how to practice loving kindness and enthusiasm, joy, all these practices, they're given with such beautiful practical examples. That text is a beautiful text. And if you come across, there are many English translations, right? And Acharya Shantideva, he's actually a Bodhisattva Shantideva, a very high level Bodhisattva, who was also a Nalanda scholar. In fact, okay, so since we're talking about him, let me just narrate his story. Right. So when he was in Nalanda University, Acharya Shantideva was believed. Okay, so what other friends or colleagues on the campus, they used to say that Acharya Shantideva used to be always in his room sleeping, right? So he used to be always not not found on the debate field and always in his room sleeping. So most of his friends or the people on the campus, they started talking about him, right? They were all great scholars. It's said that to enter into Nalanda as a student back then, you had to first debate with the gatekeepers. They were exceptionally great. Even I think in Sanskrit, they're called Dwar something.
Dwarpala.
Dwarpal,
Dwarpala.
Dwarpala.
Dwarpala, yeah,
Yeah.
Dwarpalas. So only when you're able to debate with the gatekeepers or the Dwarpalas, you could have the chance of entering to get admission. You haven't got admission yet, but just to enter. So that was the rigor of studies at Nalanda back then. So everybody was so very enthusiastic with their studies, very rigorous. So when they saw Acharya Bodhisattva Shantideva always sleeping in his room, everybody was very worried, right? All others on campus, they were very worried. They said that this person is going to bring shame to our university. So what they decided was, they said, okay, so compassion was also one of the topics that they used to study empirically, like through debates, right? Altruism, these were all done through debates. So they did not have the, how do you say, the audacity to go straight and sort of accuse him of doing the sleeping in his room most of the time. He was always found in his room. So what they did was, politely they said that, okay, let's have a gathering where we all come and teach, share what we studied or what we learned. So each one of them would come in the front and then share what they learned, right? So this was basically a plot against Bodhisattva Shantideva by the rest of them, so that they knew that he's not going to be able to say anything because he doesn't study, right? So automatically, out of shame, he'll just bail out and leave. So we don't have to throw him out, right? So this was the plot against him. So what they did, just to embarrass him, just to embarrass Bodhisattva Shantideva, what they did was so they used to sit on a throne, right, when they give teachings. So the level of the throne is also determines your level of knowledge, right? So just to embarrass him, they put a very high throne for him, very high throne. So they were very confident that he would not have anything to share. So what Bodhisattva Shantideva, when his turn came, what he did was, so those days they had, many of them had miraculous powers. Basically, they were all into, many of them were into tantric practices and they had attained very high level of realizations. So Bodhisattva Shantideva, what he did, he brought down the throne to to that level where he had reached in terms of his knowledge and insight, right? So he sat and then he started giving this teaching, this text, Bodhisattva's Way of Life. In Sanskrit, it's called Bodhicharya Avatara. And in Tibetan, it's called Stojjuk, right? So he gave, there are 10 chapters in this book. So he started giving the teachings, and they are exceptionally practical. You can apply all these stanzas to this modern life that we live in. Very practical, right? And so he started giving chapter 1, chapter 2, like, and chapter 9 is on wisdom, wisdom of emptiness, 9 and 10. So by the time he reached chapter 9, it's believed that he started levitating, he started flying, right?
Oh.
So those days, yeah, they were practitioners. Basically, they were not just like us going to university getting our degree. They were actually meditating on everything they learned. So some of them had attained very high level realizations. They could fly and they could do all these things. So he started levitating into the sky, and then by the time, so he was still teaching the chapter 9 while he was levitating. And so while he was levitating, there was some of the in the audience, some could also fly, so they started chasing him.
Oh.
So all those who could chase him, so now that's the time when they realize he's an exceptionally great teacher, and we cannot, Nalanda cannot lose him, right? So they started requesting him, please don't leave, but he left. So by the time he left, he finished the 10 chapters. So there are two versions of this text. So some say that chapter 9 and 10 was not taught by him, right? And some say that the chapter 9 and 10 is taught by him. So this is the story. So basically, after he left, so he said, okay, he said that what I had to acquire and give to Nalanda, I have done so. So it's time for me to go and benefit others elsewhere. So it said that after many years, he was found in some village, right, giving teachings to common people. So these are, he is known as a bodhisattva because his motivation is to help other sentient beings, right? So this is the story, a very beautiful story. So basically, it said that in his room, in the roof, they could find all these texts, very precious texts written by commentaries written by him. So then they went to his room and they brought out everything. Those days they used to write on the leaves, right? So they collected and they preserved his teachings later. So this is the story behind Acharya Bodhisattva Shantideva. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he often gives teachings on his texts. So, okay, so he's also a Madhyamika philosopher, Prasangika Madhyamika philosopher, right? Okay, now the etymology. So why is Prasangika school called a consequentialist? Right? Okay, so Okay, so there are two ways. There are two ways to prove something. One is reasoning, through reasoning and logic. And the other is, now this is a bit technical, so you'll find this in philosophy, logic. It's called reductio ad absurdum. Reductio ad absurdum. REDUCTIO, reductio.
What does it mean, reductio?
Ad absurdum. This is, I think, a borrowed term from another language. Okay, so I'll explain.
Can you spell it again?
Okay, REDUCTIO. Reductio is one word. Then add, just AD. That's another term. And then absurdum. ABSURDUM. Reductio ad absurdum. Okay, so I'll explain this briefly. Okay, so whenever we need to prove something, right? So whenever you have to prove something, there are two ways. One is you give logic and reasoning. Okay, for example, let's say, how do we know that the flower is impermanent? Okay, what logic reasoning would you all give? Okay, let me just explain what is reductio ad absurdum. Okay, so one is reasoning. So we give these are the reasons why this is so, right? And reductio ad absurdum is, instead of giving reasonings, you point at the so what you do is you point at the let's say, okay, so there are two people debating, right? Let's say me and person A. So what I do is, instead of giving reasoning, okay, if I have to explain that the flower is impermanent to this person A, instead of me giving reasonings to this person, this person A will also have his or her position. Do you all agree? Right? So instead of me giving reasonings to prove that this flower is impermanent, what I'll do is I'll point at the drawbacks of this person's position.
What is drawbacks?
Drawbacks.
It means absurdity.
Yeah, the absurdity.
Like absurdity.
Yes.
Okay.
So whatever the other person upholds, the position the other person upholds, you just point at their absurdities. So what you say about this is the problem, right? So there are two ways of doing that. One is you give reasons. The other way is you point at their absurdities. So that is reductio ad absurdum. Okay, now let's say the flower is impermanent. Okay, so if we have to give reasonings, what reasonings would you all give? How would you, okay, so if you all are to convince me that the flower is impermanent, how would you convince me? Let's just explore.
Through reasoning, we can say flower is impermanent because it changes every moment. It drops the petals, for example.
Okay, so it changes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you,
for example.
Okay, Madhuji.
Ma'am, we will say, like, continuing to what Beatrice is telling, that it is changing. So we say from flower, finally we'll get seeds. So one is the color is changing and the smell is going, and then even the form is changing. So from flower, it will get into another form.
Okay, so whatever Beatrice and Madhuji, both of you are saying, okay, so what type of impermanence is that?
The object is losing its identity because of causes and conditions.
Okay. Okay, what about others? How would you convince me that the flower is impermanent? But then if I bring a fresh flower right now in front of us in the class, at that moment, how would you say that this is impermanent? How would you explain it to me?
Ma'am, by the time we are explaining, you have to keep it in water first to prove the freshness. So the condition started from there itself.
Okay, okay, okay. What
By
about
the time the
others?
class ends, it will fade. Otherwise.
Good.
What about others? Yes, I'm sure all of you, we all accept that the flower is impermanent. How do we accept it? Why do we accept it? Yes. Okay, what about, let me ask Regina Undula. Okay, because it doesn't exist ultimately. Okay, my mic is not working. Okay, no problem. So Regina Undula is saying because it does not exist ultimately. All right. Okay.
But she has to prove that by logic.
Yeah, okay. How? Okay, since her
How
mic is
isn't
not working, if you would like to type, you can type. In the meantime, let me ask Padma Landul. Would you like to share?
Yes, ma'am. I let that flower stay for a longer, like some few days.
Uh-huh.
It will automatically losing its originality.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
Okay. Very nice.
mhm.
Okay, Rajdeep. Okay, Rajdeep, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here, but I could. Ma'am, I'm here, but I cannot answer right now. I'm clueless.
No, just speak your mind. Okay, so you do accept the flowers impermanent, don't you? Rajdeep, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, but I'm clueless. I cannot answer this question right
Okay.
now.
Okay, no
Sorry,
problem.
ma'am.
No problem. Okay, Rizna Mula. Okay, so we talked about impermanence, types of impermanence, right? So now we have to apply what we learned. Okay, Rizna Mula, are you there? Okay, Majid wasn't feeling well, so I won't disturb him. Okay, Ritala, would you like to try? Okay, what happened? Everybody went mute. All right. Okay. Okay, so basically we all accept a flower is impermanent, right? So this is a very, and most of the time we take things for granted. We feel that, okay, we know that the flower is impermanent. That's it. We don't want to explore further. But when you actually explore further, the first reasoning is, okay, like Padmala said, we keep it for a few days. The 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 real the texture and okay, so this is what Madhuji and Beatrice also said. So everything starts to fade, the color, the smell, right? the leaves, the petals start to fall off. So this is which type of impermanence?
Gross.
Gross impermanence, yes. So now we are studying philosophy. We try to answer, giving very definite answers like, okay, so this is gross impermanence. When you see the fresh, beautiful rose flower, let's say on day 1, on day 2 or 3, okay, day 1, 2, if you keep it in the water, it stays fresh, but it is still changing, right? That we do not see. But okay, after 2 or 3 days, like let's say 3, 4 days, it's completely droopy, right? It droops off, and then the color and the smell, everything starts to lose its texture. And so that is gross impermanence, right? So you, in a way, you have proved, you have given the reasoning of gross impermanence. You have only given me one reasoning. Now the next question is, how do you know there's gross impermanence? Right? So we go like that. So why gross impermanence? Because of the subtle impermanence. Okay, so there's, okay, between day 1 and day 3, there are 48 hours, right? 48 hours means 48 parts. So each hour has 60 minutes. 60 into 48. So you have all those moments in between. So there you are, now you're going to prove that there is subtle impermanence. So that is just talking about the minutes. And then within minutes, there's seconds. Within seconds, there are milliseconds, nanoseconds, right? So like that, you can prove that the flower is impermanent on the gross level as well as on the subtle level, right? Okay, so we can explore that way for other things as well.
Ma'am, this method is used in, there is a photography, time-lapse photography.
Yeah.
So in time-lapse photography, they show you how it is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So how collection of lot of subtle events become a gross event.
Yes, those are very interesting, actually. Yeah. Okay, so why I'm sharing these two types of reasoning is to share that why prasangikas are called consequentialist, right? So consequence means what? The result. So if you don't do this, okay, so if you are a parent, you teach your child or you warn your child, if you don't go to school, then you're going to face punishment, right? Though this is not the right way, but such things. No, if you don't, okay, let's say a king, if you don't bow in front of a king, you'll be put to prison. So that is the consequence, or you face some consequence, right? So that way, why is prasangika called consequentialist? Just because prasangikas, they do use logic, but they say that, okay, so but what they say is to prove something, to prove something, okay, so to prove something, it can be done through reasoning as well as with reductio ad absurdum method, both. So they focus, they say that if reasoning is not there, you can also, okay, mostly now these schools, they're trying to establish emptiness, right? If I have to convince, okay, not me, but if you're a prasangika philosopher, or there's another person who is a swatantrika madhyamika philosopher, if you have to convince person A that emptiness, if you have to convince that this is this is emptiness, right? How will the two schools do it? Okay, so swatantrika madhyamika, what they say is reductio ad absurdum is not adequate, is not sufficient to prove emptiness. This is what swatantrika madhyamika say. They say that you need reasoning as well, right? You have to use reasoning. This is the position of swatantrika madhyamikas. Whereas Prasangika Madhyamikas, they say it can be done through reasoning as well as reductio ad absurdum. Both the methods, you can prove emptiness. So if you are debating with Prasangikas, they'll point at all your absurdities and then prove that emptiness is possible. This is their approach, which is why they're called the consequentialist middle way school. In Tibetan, Prasangika is called Thalgu. Thalgu. Thalgu and
Kalgu.
Thalgur.
Mhm.
Thalgur. Thalgyur. Thalgur. Uma Thalgur. Uma is middle way, Madhyamika. And
But in a way, only with reasoning, maybe you are not 100% convinced, because there can be absurdities that I cannot think of an example now, but only if you look and search in for the not way of being possible of such statement, you can be convinced, right? Because if not, okay, reasoning, okay, but it could be another possibility.
I
I
think
cannot think an example.
Beatrice
Maybe
is
you have an example. It could be good. If not, but I don't know
Beatrice
if I'm
is
saying this right.
very much
It's
a
okay.
Prasangika philosopher.
Oh no. But
Yeah,
I'm thinking that because
every
just to
time
be
you give.
convinced,
Mhm.
no, you have to to say, okay, this is no way possible what you are saying is no way. I'm show you where is not possible or how is not possible. It's okay.
Okay, so let me try to think. I don't know if my example is very relevant.
Okay.
Okay, something like okay, let's say I'm not sure, but let me just okay, you can correct me if I don't make sense. So let's say if you're in a cave, you're caught in a cave which has let's say which has 10 doors. 10 doors is in 10 outlets, and you have been to this cave many times. You know there's one door which leads you outside the cave, right? And the rest of the 9 doors, they don't lead you anywhere. And then there's another person with you in the cave, and you are to convince this person that this is the door, right? So so one way is you just show the door.
Hmm.
You just show the door that this is the door that leads you outside, right? So come this
Mhm.
way, blah blah blah. You take him out, and the other way is you show him all the other 9 doors that
Mm.
don't lead you anywhere first, and then you're left with only one door to leave.
Yeah,
I don't know if it makes
perfect.
sense.
Yeah, for me, yes. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so I think Prasangika's approach is something like you point at all the absurdities of the other opponents, other schools,
Mm.
and then
Mm.
the other schools have no option but to accept,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, something like that. All right, so going to assertion on the objects. Okay, so I'll just touch upon. So they have assertion on the basis, they have assertion on the object and subject. This we all know. So assertion on the object, they talk about the manifest and hidden phenomena. Actually, they all the schools like above Chittamatra, above Sautantrika, sorry, they talk about positive, negative, hidden, manifest, two truths. These are very common. But here, Prasangika, they focus on manifest and hidden phenomena and the two truths, and then other ancillary topics. right? Okay, so I think it's time. Okay, so we'll just quickly do manifest and hidden phenomena, which we've done before. So I think we all know what. Is there anyone who doesn't know what's manifest and hidden phenomena? Is there anyone who would like me to repeat? Okay, so I'll just read out the definition according to this school, right? So definition of manifest phenomena, according to Prasangika, what they say is a phenomenon which can be cognized through the power of experience comma, without depending on reasons. Okay, so these are, okay, so the example for manifest phenomena is sense objects or obvious objects, mostly sense objects. So whatever objects your sense consciousness interacts with, right? So your ear consciousness, which is one of the sense consciousnesses, what is the object? The sound. Sound becomes the object. So this sense object, it's an example of the manifest phenomena, which just comes about obviously. You don't have to depend on any reasons, right? Okay. So they are also called manifest objects, obvious objects, sense objects, non-hidden phenomenon. They're all synonymous. So form, sound, smell, taste, tactility. So these are all sense objects. So most of the time, out of 24 hours, let's say 6 or 7 or 8 hours, 7 hours, let's say 27, 24, 17 hours a day, we are mostly caught by these sense objects, right? 17 hours a day, most of the time, unless you're a daydreamer, right? Most of the time we are completely consumed by these sense objects. When you listen to music, or when you go to a shopping mall, or you watch a movie, or you eat, right? Or the clothes that we wear. So these are all sense objects that we interact with. So 17 hours a day, like it's mostly the sense objects we interact with. Okay, so definition of hidden phenomenon.
Ma'am, can I ask something? Ma'am, can I ask something?
Yes, Madhuji.
You said that 17 hours a day we are caught by our sense object. Does it include mind also?
No. So 5 sensory consciousnesses plus 1 mental consciousness, 6 consciousnesses we talked about, right?
Yes,
So all the schools, they consider these 6 types of consciousnesses, except Chittamatra school.
Okay.
Chittamatra school talks about 8 types of consciousnesses. So these 5 sense objects, right? They are the sense objects of the 5 sensory consciousnesses.
Right.
And the 6th, which is mental. So what is happening is, okay, so the mental is always there. So mental is what feels, the feeling that we experience, right? Okay, let's say there's a And there's a very, how do you explain? There's a very, how do you, uh, the smell of the perfume. How
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
say?
Because the nose, the glands
No,
in
no,
the nose go to the brain.
no, how do you give the quality? Beautiful, not beautiful. It's beautiful is
Yes.
for form. For the smell, how do you say? Fragrant.
Fragrant, very
Sorry,
fragrant. Yeah.
fragrant. It's such a beauty. Okay, such a what fragrant, but
Fragrant. Yeah, good or bad, intense.
good. Okay,
Good, bad,
intense.
intense. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
let's say a very good, nice fragrance.
Mm.
There's a perfume there.
Yes.
So what is happening is, okay, so what happens is when my nose sense power comes in contact with the nose, this sense object, the nose sense object, right, which is the smell. So that time, I do not know whether it's pleasant or unpleasant.
Yes.
Whatever is happening at the sensorial level, we do not know, there's no feeling attached to it. Only when this information is given to the, okay, so the neuroscientists, they would say that it's the brain. Whereas,
Yes.
whereas the philosophers who believe in the concept of mind, they would say, or in Buddhist texts, they say that it's the mind when this information is passed to the brain, because the mind and the brain, they're mutually dependent. When we are alive, they are together, they're existing together. Though entity wise they're different, but they're codependent. They're codependent. So whatever function of the mind is happening, neuroscientists, they call it brain. They say that everything is done by brain. Of course, the brain, they do have the function, but philosophers would say that, who believe in the concept of mind, they will say it is the mind that determines the feeling aspect, whether the fragrant is good, a nice fragrant, or a bad fragrant. The feeling that arises after this information is passed to the brain, there's a feeling that arises. So that is done by the mental consciousness. So on the sensorial level, the feeling is not involved. It's just mere cognitive function. Only the cognition is happening. Remember the two functions of the mind, cognitive function and the affective function. The affective function only happens because of the presence of this mental consciousness, which is behind all these five sensory consciousnesses. Ultimately, the feeling is determined by this mental consciousness, whether something is okay. So then attachment arises depending on that feeling, right? So all these are done by the mind, mental consciousness. We need to make a distinction between these two.
But here you're speaking only about the five sense powers.
Yes,
Only the five, not the
yes.
sixth. Okay. Okay.
No, but she's telling, the teacher is already telling that mind is always there. You said mind is always there. All the
Yeah, but
senses are only sensing till the level the message is given by the mind. The final message is given by the mind.
No, the feeling is determined by the
no.
mind.
Yes, yes, correct, correct. The nose cannot tell you that it is good or bad.
Okay, so
But
one thing
here
we
you are not talking about feelings. You are talking about only the object, the
sensorial objects.
what the sense cap. So the smell, but
What
not
the
the
sense
feeling.
conscious, yeah, not the feeling.
Not
Yes.
the feeling, Madhuchi. No, no, no.
Feeling
So
is
the
just,
mind is not involved.
so the
No.
mind is always there. Okay, so here, depending, okay, so if your question is in context of the manifest phenomena, then all the
Yes.
sensorial objects are the manifest phenomena. This we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Excluding mind.
Only sensorial objects,
Yes.
excluding mind.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so definition for hidden phenomena. Definition for hidden phenomena: a phenomenon which needs to be cognized, a phenomenon which needs to be cognized by dependence on reasons.
By the
by dependence on reasons. Okay, so hidden phenomena, as I mentioned many times earlier, there are two kinds: slightly hidden phenomena and very hidden phenomena. So slightly hidden phenomena are those phenomena where we use, okay, so hidden phenomena, we have to use reasons and logic and reasoning, right? So, okay, so the example I gave was of your lungs. How do you know that you have lungs? Have you ever seen your lungs? None of us have seen our own lungs, right?
Mm.
Unless we can self-operate ourselves, which is not possible, right? So, okay, so we have never seen our lungs, but we know we have lungs. Why? Because we are breathing, right? So based on this inference or reasoning that this breath, we taking in the oxygen and we exhaling the carbon dioxide. So this is done by the lungs, which is an organ, right? So there you have to depend on a reasoning. So these are all slightly hidden phenomena, which even science talks about. Science, they touch upon the manifest and the hidden phenomena. And very hidden phenomena are those phenomena which cannot be proved through reasoning, which to understand these phenomena, we have to depend on an authority. Like the simplest of the examples is uh, your birthday, right? So your birthday, you will never know. You cannot even reason out unless you believe your parents, the testimony of your parents or your doctors, right? Or other people. So in Ladakh, in the older generation, right? Many of them, they don't know when they were born because there was no concept of writing and there was no concept of certificates as such. You know, they were living in a very primitive times. So many of the older people here, when I ask them their age, they have no clue. And many of others who are their generation, many of them have died, right? So there's no one to actually, you know, profess that, okay, this is the year this person was born. We were born together, so, you know, something like that. So these things are there. So their birthdays can never be proved. So those are very, very hidden phenomena. Okay. Okay, so today we'll stop here. And tomorrow we have our usual class, Wednesday classes. So we meet tomorrow at the same time. And then the next class, which is going to be the last class, will be on Saturday. And tomorrow I'll try to just quickly, I don't think we can go very deep into this school, but I'll just try to finish it up. The main important points I'll share as it is Prasangika. If as long as we understand this concept of the rainbow, the mirage, just this idea of the dream, how we, upon waking up, everything is just 100% mental projection. As long as we understand this concept, Madhyamika philosophy, we have briefly understood, you know, the vague understanding. But to go very deep, we'll have to do extensive studies, right? So since we do not have much time, okay, so I'll try to just cover up all the topics tomorrow's class. And Saturday, if our director agrees, if it's possible for him to join, then we'll have some, we'll have some time. We'll have to allot to the director. Okay.
Do you have the chance to speak with the university or the director for how to continue? If it's possible to continue with classes or not?
So
Do you have the chance?
I did not speak to the director directly because he is supposed to fly in today from Delhi, and I only spoke to one of the office members there, and he told me that the director hasn't been keeping well. So I refrained from calling him because I didn't want to
Of
disturb
course,
him. Yeah.
of course.
But in any case, if they do decide to continue or keep another course, that will happen. That will take some time because I think, but I'll definitely speak to him. And if he joins on Saturday, then you can all express your opinion and views.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, no
Thank you.
questions,
Thank
then
you
I'll
very
see you all
much.
tomorrow. Thank you so much.
See you.
Yeah,
Tashi the
see you.
leg. See you. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.